Hello and welcome back to the Cryptopals Guided Tour. My name is Eli, I'll be your guide. In this video, we'll be looking at breaking fixed nonce counter mode using substitutions. This is challenge 19, closely related to challenge 20, which we will be looking at right after this one, in a separate video of course. Challenge 19, we have a series of base 64 encoded messages here. These are all plain texts, which is why they're encoded here. It's not because they're raw bytes, it's because they're meant to be secret from us. We're supposed to encrypt these and then try to decrypt them. There's a bit of verbiage here on the idea that these should be successive encryptions, not a consecutive encryption. Do not concatenate these together, but just generate a bunch of tiny ciphertexts. Walking through the text of the challenge here, we have this note. The counter nonce wasn't randomized because that's the challenge. It's specified that it shouldn't be randomized. Yeah, we have the nonce value fixed to 0 up here in a random AES key. So because the counter nonce wasn't randomized, we have a repeating key stream that's been used against each of these messages. Now, this is something that is very easy to break statistically, and we're going to be looking at that in challenge 20. Honestly, the first time that I went through these challenges, I just used that solution here because it feels obvious to me and because there's a bit of a hint even to use it when they talk about language frequency. However, I don't think that's actually the intent for challenge 19. And so this for me is going to be a little bit of personal redemption as I try to do this challenge aligned with the spirit of the challenge, which is to attack this crypto system piecemeal, guess letters, and use every trick in the book, common English trigrams and so on. Don't overthink it, but do think it the appropriate amount. So without further ado, I don't think we're going to do like a lot of theory for this one, because what is there to say? I mean, I just did a whole video, video 18, on what counter is and how you can mess it up. So if you want to understand why this is broken, go watch that video. And if you want to see how to break it, watch this video and the next one. So we're going to just copy these because we know we're going to need them. And let's just jump right in, shall we? And right off the bat, what are we going to need here? Let's just use our own AES counter encryption function, shall we? Now, we're going to generate a random AES key. This could, of course, be either 128 or 256-bit. Personally, I think that 256 is overkill, especially for a use case like this, so we will just do a standard 16 bytes for 128 bits. And now our ciphertexts. And now here's where we will paste these in. And of course, we notice that these are not exactly formatted in a friendly way. Luckily, we're using Vim, so this is quite easy to fix. We're just going to write a little macro here. And now that macro should work just fine for each one of these. However, we're going to save a little bit of time. We note from the relative line numbers that there's 35 remaining messages here, so we're just going to hit 35 at, and that does all of them. It does leave the last one unfinished, which is appropriate because we want to handle that one differently anyway, right? Because it's not going to have a trailing comma. So we're just going to do that one manually and then close that and close that, get our proper indentation, and there we go. It's nice to use a modern editor, isn't it? Now, there's some interesting properties that I could show you on these ciphertexts, and honestly, it's killing me to not go into that right now, but I'm going to save that for the next video, so stay tuned. For now, we're going to be doing this one as specified, which is basically just try to get lucky. So let's write a little helper function to infer some key stream from a guess of some plain text bytes. And basically what I'm envisioning here is I want like something that's almost like a REPL loop, a read eval print loop, but what it's going to be reading and evaluating are guesses as to the start of the ith plain text. And then it'll take that guess and derive the corresponding key stream bytes using this math right here. And then it will take that key stream and apply it to all of the messages. This will allow us to see if our guess produces plausible decryptions. And then hopefully, if, for example, we're able to guess a complete word on one line, then it might give us a complete word minus one letter on another line, which we could then fill out and get one character further along and sort of go step by step in this way. I hope this is making sense, but it'll be clearer once I actually demonstrate it. So anyway, we're going to be passing in an index here into the ith ciphertext, and we're going to be giving a guess as to the plain text. So we're going to say plain text I equals text.encode ASCII, because we're going to be reading this in, so it's going to come in as a str, but we need it to be bytes in order to do XOR with it. Speaking of which, do I have? Yes, I do have that imported. Okay, we're good there. So far, this is not exactly rocket science. This all should be pretty much intuitive. Now we're going to be looping over the ciphertexts to see if this keystream works with all of them. And because we're going to be wanting to do this sort of iteratively, we're going to want to not only loop over the ciphertexts, but also print out their indices as we loop over them. So let's do that. We're using J here because I used I in these subscripts because of this variable name ind, which shortens to I. We could use I here, but I think that would just be a little bit less clear because it would feel like a name collision with this, even though it's technically not one. So we'll use J here, and we will say, okay, this plain text, which we could call this PTJ, I guess. Let's do that. In fact, and we'll call this CTJ too for consistency. And then this is going to be a partial decryption, but I want to like have a little visual indicator of how much do we have left to go. So I'm going to add some question marks onto the end here. So the difference in these lengths will be simply the number of undecrypted bytes left in CTJ. So we'll add that many question marks here to show how far we have to go. And yeah, we'll just print that out, right? Because why not? We don't need to be returning this necessarily. The idea is for this to be an interactive program with the user. So we're going to worry more about communicating with the user than anything else. So yeah, we're going to initialize this. We're going to be prompting the user for these values, but we'll start out with some dummy values. And I like to wrap something like this with new line prints just to make it a little bit more legible. And you got to admit, there's a timeless, classy style to that little arrow prompt there. I like that a lot. You could also do, you know, the dollar sign's another classic. But for something like this, I really like this. I think that's just, it's understated. It's slick. It's got it all. And what's cool about this, a lot of people know about split, but did you know that you can tell it how many times you want it to split? For example, if I did that, this is what it does. Isn't that neat? So in this case, that allows us to pass in a number and then a space and then the literal exact guess for the text. And it won't mess with that guess at all because once it sees one space, it's done modifying that string. And we'll just cast end to an integer because it comes in as a string, of course. And now we just loop. So here's where this gets exciting because we are already about to test this. Okay, and there we go. We have nothing. We have no idea what this says. So let's start taking some guesses. We're going to try to guess the first word of the first line. So let's say 0, and just as a shot in the dark, we'll call it the. Okay, that is clearly wrong. That did not work. Notice, of course, the does show up here. That's because we are literally defining the key stream to make this decrypt to this value. So it's unsurprising for that to look like a real word, but nothing else does. So let's take some other guesses. We'll do A, maybe. Oh, this is closer, but still clearly not right. Look at all those ats. That's interesting. For now, we're just going to keep going. And thinking about the plain texts that have shown up in Cryptopals so far, obviously a lot of vanilla ice, but that feels almost too easy to go for. But there's a lot of them that are written in the first person. So let's try the first person pronoun. And I'll admit I'm cheating a little bit because I've already solved this before and I know what the plain text is, but I'm trying to make it seem plausible, right? This is something that, given enough time, I think anyone could arrive at. If we do I, okay, this doesn't look immediately broken. It's weird that every line starts with a capital letter. That's not particularly plausible, especially, you know, some of these. So maybe we'll try a lowercase I because, as we've discussed in previous challenges, there is a funny property with case in ASCII. And of course, note I'm putting a space after the I because it's the end of a word. Let's see where we can get from here. We've got or POAN. Maybe this is and. Let's try that. 8 and. Okay, so far so good. Yeah, we have of here and then a space. That's nice. AROBEI. Now this says and. So let's suppose that this is a full word, meaning it will be followed by a space. So we'll say and then a space. And so far so good. Now 0, I'm just going to take a wild shot in the dark here and say that that might be I have. Though actually, I think we can even, there's even safer bets than that. So I've changed my mind here. I bet that 12 is being. Okay, so far so good. And actually, you can put a space after that. Now, this is probably 18, right? And just as a note here, this is slightly different. We're not looking at language frequency here, and we're not looking for English trigrams per se, except intuitively. But I do think that this is, this is very much a solve the cipher by hand. This is perhaps a tool-assisted version of that, if you will. Okay, yeah, so clearly we're getting somewhere here. 22 she rode. Put a space after that. That gets us one notch further. 25. This is probably, oh, actually, this is definitely was coming. Was coming. And ignorant, that's a full word. We can put a space after that. And this is probably have down here, 27. Ooh, and now here we have a good one, 18th, and this is probably 18th century, right? And we can put a space after that too. I always forget to do that, apparently. And this is probably argument, right? All right, and now we actually have some full lines here, which is exciting. And this is starting to get trickier, in my opinion, but I think that this is the word. Okay, similarly, they down there. This looks like horses, right? Ooh, I don't know about horses though, because that brought in some garbage here. So, and rode our winged, or maybe it's a comma. No, maybe a period. Ooh, I like that because that gets us a semicolon here, which does look right. I hope this is worth watching. And now I think close. What would this phrase be? Right? Is this close of day? Oh my! I must have. Did I make a typo? Oh, because I put a space in the wrong place. Yeah, so there we go. That's fixed now. And now, yeah, we have the full message decrypted. And this, I call it message. It's really a poem. And for those who don't know, this is actually quite a nice and famous poem. Let's look it up here. This is by Yeats. Yeats? I'm not sure, man. I took like 4 years of English classes in undergrad. So I did a whole honors program, and I still don't know how to say that guy's name. But yeah, this is a poem called Easter 1916. This is actually quite a nice poem. This is about a group of Irish political dissidents trying and failing to throw off oppressive British colonial rule, a theme that without a doubt resonates throughout history and across many different contexts. So let's go ahead and read this poem. It's quite a nice one. This starts with, I have met them at close of day, coming with vivid faces, from counter or desk among grey 18th century houses. I have passed with a nod of the head, or polite meaningless words, or have lingered a while and said polite meaningless words, and thought before I had done of a mocking tale or a jibe to please a companion around the fire at the club, being certain that they and I but lived where motley is worn, all changed utterly, a terrible beauty is born. That woman's days were spent in ignorant goodwill, her nights in argument, until her voice grew shrill. What voice more sweet than hers, when young and beautiful, she rode to harriers. This man had kept a school, and rode our winged horse. This other his helper and friend was coming into his force. He might have won fame in the end, so sensitive his nature seemed, so daring and sweet his thought. This other man, I dreamed, a drunken, vainglorious lout. He had done the most bitter wrong to some who are near to my heart, yet I number him in the song. He too has resigned his part. In the casual comedy, he too has been changed in his turn, transformed utterly. A terrible beauty is born. Hearts with one purpose alone, through summer and winter seem enchanted to a stone to trouble the living stream. The horse that comes from the road, the rider, the birds that range From cloud to tumbling cloud, minute by minute they change. A shadow of cloud on the stream changes minute by minute. A horse hoof slides on the brim, and a horse plashes within it. The long-legged moorhens dive, and hens to moorcocks call. Minute by minute they live, the stones in the midst of it all. Too long a sacrifice can make a stone of the heart. Oh, when may it suffice? That is heaven's part, our part, to murmur name upon name, as a mother names her child, when sleep at last has come on limbs that had run wild. What is it but nightfall? No, no, not night, but death. Was it needless death after all? For England may keep faith, for all that is done and said. We know their dream, enough to know they dreamed and are dead. And what if excess of love bewildered them till they died? I read it out in a verse, MacDonagh and McBride, and Connolly and Pierce. Now and in time to be, wherever green is worn, are changed utterly. A terrible beauty is born. It's kind of a dark poem, but strangely moving. And there's a nice companion piece to this one on this site. I particularly like this whole discussion. I think this is something that it behooves us who stare at screens all day to do our best to broaden our minds a little bit to the broader niceties of the world and the compelling aspects of life that you can find outside of a program. I particularly like this quote at the end. We make out of the quarrel with others rhetoric, but of the quarrel with ourselves, poetry. Well, with that, I think that wraps up the 19th challenge in the Cryptopals Guided Tour. I hope you found this helpful or at least interesting, and I'll see you in the next one.